everyone's still with us. Adam Smitho-Smith is on the line, live and exclusive in Technicolor. Andy's here as well. Dave from Boxing's First. Ozzy, rapping Rob Kelly with me, Steve Wellings. Let's move on then, Ozzy. I was looking through Twitter this week, as you tend to do, and there was a bit of slagging going on about the pay-per-view, the big pay-per-view that was coming up. And somebody said, you know what, you should be grateful for these type of pay-per-views. Just imagine if Eddie Hearn walked away from boxing, where you'd be. Where would we be, Ozzy? If Eddie Hearn walked away from British boxing, would it collapse like the Great Wall of China, communist Russia? Would we see a collapse if Eddie walked away?
No. His dad fucked it off all those years back. And look, it's still here now and it's still continued. And you know that Frank certainly wouldn't leave. And Fat Mick, he's on a resurgence as well. So he'd try and lap up some of those fighters. You have got to give him credit for what he has done, certainly. It's not things I'm all into, but in terms of like production, fight nights, I think the big breakout fight for him was Froch Groves 1. That allowed him to go one step further with the rematch, and after that, and then he's got Anthony Joshua, who kind of sells himself. But he's done a good job there as well. But he's got an audience that cares for a product that is names and banter rather than ability and quality. So as we say, we're seeing Dave Allen now probably on his 10th pay-per-view against Mr. fucking Blobby from America with big chippy tits. But people are buzzing over that because Lovejoy's got a padded record and Dave Allen's rocked up to the bubble in a Stone Island jacket and some fucking slippers. But they'll lap that up and they love that sort of stuff. Whereas for us, I'm more interested in seeing quality fights. And that's not necessarily saying, like it's, number one against number two in the division type of thing. Just evenly matched fights because they always produce the goods as well. Naturally, you can get some fights that are made and turn out good by accident. Example, Buatsi against that Kalic. 99% of people thought Buatsi would smash him to bits. But I certainly don't think it will collapse. I mean, at the moment, look, the only way he's getting the bigger fights on at the moment is sticking them on pay-per-view. The Dillian White, Alexander Povetkin fight earlier this year I think it came in at about 200,000 buys, which I still think is fairly decent. I mean, you've got 200,000 people spending 20 quid on that. I don't think that's that bad. But for the numbers that they've churned out previously, that's quite a big drop to what they have been doing. So, look, you may well kind of see him leave in a roundabout way if this Sky deal, he walks from this Sky deal and goes with DAZN. Naturally, with Sky, you have got a product there that is ready built. The marketing is done. You remove Sky Sports News. You remove everything Sky that he uses as a marketing ploy. And then you're reliant on a subscription-based service in DAZN, which is coming to the UK with no content, no football, no cricket, no Formula One, tennis, wrestling. You name it, there's nothing on there. And it's just going to be matchroom boxing. It'll be a huge ask for them. And that will be a test then to see how good he is, because he's not only having to A, sell tickets, but B, bring in thousands of subscribers. So, look, boxing's always going to be here. It's developing, it's changing. But if he was to walk tomorrow, would it still be, what would it be like in 12, 18 months? Well, it'd still be here, that's for sure.
Yeah, Ozzy making some great points there. The skill set of Eddie would really be put to test because it's a completely different thing he would have to do then. Andy, we're seeing the rise of MTK, obviously AJ losing as well, DAZN drifting on in, people getting unhappy. At the moment, Eddie's main job is to sell pay-per-views, narratives and storylines to the casuals. But he's an innovative guy, let's be honest. He's a good salesman. He will be able to always fall on his feet no matter what he does in life. But he's not on as firm footing, you wouldn't have thought, especially with the British boxing public as he once was. I'm not going to say he's going to disappear, but he's not necessarily the darling that he was when he came in 8, 9, 10 years ago.
No, definitely no. I mean, he came in a kind of semi-blaze of glory, shall we say. I mean,
breath of fresh air, wasn't he? The stale Warren years.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, he was the very first one to really kind of use social media to its absolute fullest. That's when like it was peak Twitter. Everybody was trolling each other, and that it was just a free for all. And he him himself, he got tied up in all the banter and that as well, kind of creating all that shit. And as a result of social media use and that, he's created this cult following, and they will hang on to every word. He's created fake bot accounts and stuff like that, just to kind of just to throw in a response and stuff. He's talked big. He said he wanted, to be the UFC of boxing. The sport must be like on a competitive level, and it needs to have compelling cards and stuff like that. Nothing about cards with good fights. It's got to be a compelling card. So that basically means it's got to have a storyline in it. It's got to have like say someone who's trained very very hard according to Bean, or someone who like works in a chip shop, or does like say a post round and needs to get up at 3 a.m. and finishes the post round at like at noon and goes to the gym and all that sort of stuff. So it's all revolving around this story. He's tried to entice PBC fighters. Instead, all he got was Boo Boo Andrade, Daniel Roman, and Jesse Vargas. And then he releases Michael Hunter, for example. If he leaves, look, it's like everything else. Frank came in and took over for Mickey Duff. Mickey Duff came in and took over for Jarvis Astaire. You go back to when the National Sporting Club was made. That was the guy Bettison. He was a promoter. That I mean, whenever like a top figure leaves, it creates a power vacuum. And at the minute, it seems to be MTK are hoovering up all these fighters. I see they've opened another gym up. Was it in Canada? I believe it is. I think it's out in Alberta. That's
That's right,
something
yeah.
like 21, 22 gyms and stuff like that across the globe. Germany, Denmark, in South Africa, Kazakhstan, even Brazil. I mean, they're all over the place and stuff. So you would think if Eddie says goodbye and stuff, then MTK would probably like jump at the chance to get the Sky deal. As Ozzy says, Fat Mick's making a kind of a comeback in that he's on terrestrial TV. You can maybe make an arm, and I think that basically is what would really help here is if Sky would just end this exclusive nonsense with Eddie, because it seems to be that Eddie's got the final say what fights end up on Sky and stuff, right? We need to get back to open promotions, i.e., every promoter gets a chance, get a couple of dates a year and stuff. If Eddie's going to walk away, then that's the ideal opportunity to say, like, Fat Mick, you're going to get a couple of dates. Give one an opportunity if you want MTK. There'll be you call him Sam, no Sam, Steve Wood, guys like that, for example, for VIP, rather than putting the guys on YouTube. Like, give you guys the opportunity to get British title fights, air title fights and stuff. Get the Friday night fights back. Make that as your kind of like your prospect type kind of show, then maybe put on a main card on the Saturday or something like that. I don't know, something along those lines. Give one promoter a chance with a prospect show on the Friday, and then put a main show on the Saturday with another promoter in a different venue. I don't know. I mean, it just seems to be everything. Eddie says they're no cutting back on their money. Sky, it's just basically to do with the gate. He says like something Josh was losing something like £6 million at the gate or whatever, and that. Okay, that's just mathematics. That's just a situation as it is and stuff. But I agree with some of these points. But what he said about Brooke and stuff, about the money. But all in all, Eddie's kind of like say, he's earned a shitload of money for the sport and stuff like that. And I think at this point with the book coming out, I just think he's trying to be this celebrity. Maybe it's a bit like what Rob said about Tyson Fury. Maybe he's got one foot at the sport as well. Kind of looking up this next movement. I mean, he's in business with Joshua with the premium gyms and stuff like that. He'll have investments out of the place, the Cayman Islands. He'll maybe have been the Black Book somewhere with out in some island somewhere and stuff like that. So
We'll see him on I'm a Celebrity on
Yeah.
ITV soon as well. That's sort of it up his tree, and it just primetime TV
Banner,
type of
yeah.
thing. I always said Box Nation would have been good for small old shows, like Steve Wood, Steve Goodwin, Carl Grief, Steffi Bull type of thing, and utilize that platform, to get the small hole shows out there, do them on Friday nights, whenever, them building into it. But it's going to be interesting to see. I wonder, like, some of me thinks I don't know if he's going to walk. I mean, he keeps talking about this UFC model now. That will never work in boxing, ever. You would need to lose all the one. You just say, for example, you retain the IBF and you lose WBO, WBC, WBA. You'd basically then need, say, one promoter in the world to sign everybody, wouldn't you? That's just never going to happen. I mean, I don't know anything about UFC. I don't follow it. I know the odd fighter here and there, but I would say that there's a hell of a lot more boxers than there are people who compete in the UFC. I know you've got that Bellator as well, which is like the B standard UFC. But I would certainly say there's more boxers and there's more depth in boxing compared to UFC. So can you imagine just having all these fighters under one promotional banner? It'd be nigh impossible.
Never
And
happened.
as well, they keep talking about UFC. The fucking purses. It says it all. Conor McGregor got his biggest fucking payday fighting a boxer, not fighting his biggest fights in an octagon, and that's because money is to be made in boxing, and the dough is just not always there in UFC either. So that's
The
one
only
thing
way-
about competition that have.
The only way you can see it work is if they say, right, the networks do a deal with each other and they just sack off the titles. Say we're going to have one guy who's the champion in each division and then just agree to do cross promotions, but then cut out all the sanctioning fees and paying the fucking governing bodies.
The
and all
PBC
that.
tried to do that, didn't they, Rob? I think that was what they tried to do when they first started.
Yeah, but but then the other networks get together and they freeze them out. Like, so you have to say if the belts are not important and it's just the main guy in each division, then they could do without the belts. Like, to just be the number one, whatever the fuck he is, world champion. Like back in the old days, but it's never going to happen. Like, never.
Yeah, just before we move on then, Andy, it does feel, as you said, like Sky's sort of watertight connection with Eddie, which is also cemented with the likes of the snooker and especially the darts as well. It does feel like it is starting to come to an end now. They're ringing the final pounds out to these people with excessive pay-per-views, which isn't necessarily Eddie's fault. I think that the top brass at Sky, and then obviously through Bean, are pushing these pay-per-views. And they're like, we've got the perfect salesman here. If anyone could sell 8 pay-per-views involving the likes of Derek Chisora and all this other recycled shit, it's Eddie. So it's a sort of match made in heaven, isn't it?
It is. And at the end of the day, I'm sure I read somewhere that Eddie, part of the contract, Eddie had to provide 6 or 8 pay-per-views a year. I might be wrong on that, but I'm sure there was something along those lines anyway. But as he says, even if Eddie wasn't looking like, if Eddie was looking long term and wanted to be this power broker and this main man in the sport, and I'm kind of going off a tangent here about what the actual question was, but outside of Joshua, who's 31 now, fights twice a year now, what stars has he actually got? To actually kind of drive forward an actual league, and entice these guys. He's got nobody. He's never really kind of, there's maybe even you count on one hand how many fighters he's actually brought through from the start to world champion or to be like a big star in that. One of them would be Joshua. Kalyafai took for the start as well, and there's someone else I can think of, I can't remember his name at the minute. So there's 2 names minimum and stuff. Sky, it's just go. I just go back to. I just think they need to kind of go back to the kind of small hall stuff and that, and leave the big shows. You kind of have a big show every week, and that. So you've got to have more kind of like domestic level shows on there because it's only about we're a small country. Every show can't be like world title fights and stuff like that, but you've got to have quality. You've got to have quality because this pay-per-view at the weekend is absolute travesty. Absolute travesty. Dave Allen against a guy who's supposedly weighing 340 pounds. You got 2 women's fights on that card. You go. We mentioned last week. You got Kambosos and Selby, which probably be a snoozer and that. Guys probably struggle to make weight, and then Usyk's fighting a kind of shot the shit fucking heavyweight or kind of washed heavyweight, shall we say? So it's I agree. They're ringing the bell. They're sucking out every single penny they can get at the minute. Everybody's got to live. Everybody's got to get paid and stuff. But it can't go on forever. It simply can't go on forever because these empty arenas and stuff. It's going to be like this for another 6 months, but it looks at minimum. So decisions need to be made. Eddie's talking about, like, for example, I can't pay Brooks. I've got obligations to other fighters and stuff. Right? But obviously, that's going to have a knock-on effect as well. The money situation, but he's making sure his guys get paid to then no getting decent fights. I mean, Blassy's opponent, for example, tougher fight than expected, but I bet he came cheap as chips. That guy that Shellac guy, whoever he was. But as for Sky and that, as it says. They're always selling the product. They're always dancing to the tune, and Bellew, Nelson, Macklin, they're all falling in line. Andy Clark was good for a bit, and that, and he quickly kind of like followed suit, and that, just to be the company man and that. So I mean, it will come to an end someday, and then they'll need to change the business model.
It begs the question: what kills pay-per-view boxing more, a global pandemic or Audley Harrison versus David Hay.
Aye. That's
We
what
need to
ended-
bring Audley back.
That was what ended it. No, it was no. I think it was Hay Klitschko that ended it eventually. I'm sure, and then he needed
Yeah,
it back. He
maybe.
needed it back for Froch against Kessler rematch.
That's right. That's right.
But just says if I agree with what Ozzy was saying as well. Was if he sacks off Sky and goes with the zone, it will test his promotion abilities to the absolute fullest and stuff, because he'll need a team in there who will need to be on there, out there every day promoting that shit, and you need something to entice you in. And there's nothing, as I says, if you're going to entice me in to subscribe to your channel, right? You need something that I'm going to be interested in watching, and you've got nothing, really nothing. You're not making good fights. You're not making great fights. You're not making pound for pound fights. You're not making legacy fights. You're making fights for your mates or your pals. Like, you want to see your mates getting paid and stuff, so you can get a bit of money on the back end as well. But it comes at the cost of something else, and it's not getting good fights.
Well, that's a good point, actually, Dave. I'm going to bring you in at this point. It does come at a cost of something else, because Eddie definitely put British boxing on the back burner whenever he signed up with DAZN. I don't blame him to fault him for his ambition and that, Dave. He went over, he started Matchroom USA, he tried something with somebody else's money, and he stretched himself far too thin. He hadn't got the fighters. He was bringing guys over like Tommy Coyle and all that to fill out these DAZN cards. He was trying to fulfill the Matchroom UK obligations back with Sky as well. He stretched himself far too thin. And the telling thing for me, Dave, was that DAZN press conference. You remember when he said he was going to take over the world, and then he comes out with Jesse Vargas? And I always remember Daniel Roman, one of the American journalists, was there, and he said to Roman, "What's the deal with you and Eddie then? What have you signed for? What's the contract?" And Roman was basically, "I don't know." He sort of rang me during the week and said, "You want to come on down to the press conference?" And here I am, kind of thing. And the next thing, he had a 3-fight deal or whatever it was. But I mean, he stretched himself too thin, Dave, is the point I'm trying to make, between Sky and between DAZN, and the quality suffered.
He certainly did, but he's Eddie Hearn. If there's money involved, he'll sign the line. He doesn't think of the effect on boxing, and that's what pushes people like myself and yourselves against him, because we're ultimately there for the sport. We're not there for the event that Eddie sells. We're there for the sport of boxing. We was here before Eddie Hearn, will be here after Eddie Hearn, and he's sort of sucking it dry at the minute. It's stretched thin. The product's not there. It's not competitive. It's entertaining from a casual's point of view. If you like fireworks, if you like a backstory that this guy used to have a betting addiction, if you like commentators that are going to sell a narrative, so no matter what is happening in the ring, they'll make it entertaining with some nonsense that they're spouting. Eddie Hearn just not delivering the products. He's, like we mentioned earlier, he's talking of this UFC one title, one promotional outfit. He won't even talk to the next biggest promoter who is just down the road from him. He won't even talk to him to make the biggest fights. He's full of shit. He's there to make his money. He doesn't care about boxing. If he died tomorrow, he'd walk away with his pockets full, and he wouldn't care any less.
Strong tough to me, though. You're going to have to try and follow that one then. Final word to you. Like I said, whenever Eddie first came in, he was promoting Frampton, doing McCluskey shows as well in Belfast. He was generally a breath of fresh air. He was bringing something a bit new, a bit different. But over the years, it has become quite money-orientated and narrative-driven. And I think sometimes the basic fights have suffered. And also, one thing I noticed with guys, this could be my perception, but so many careers, especially Josh Kelly, they're going so fast and we're all excited and it's an upward trajectory, and all of a sudden they just grind to a halt and you don't see the guy for months on end. This seems to happen so often with Eddie. And if he walked away from British boxing tomorrow, it would be a shame. It wouldn't have any more fireworks, but someone else would still pick up the talent at the end of the day. Boxing wouldn't die if Eddie walked away.
Yeah, absolutely. The short answer to the question posed is that, yeah, it would continue pretty much as normal. I mean, Frank Warren has and will survive or could survive a nuclear apocalypse, and he'll still be knocking about. I mean,
and he's not without his faults, Smitho. Sorry to interrupt you. He was the big evil before Eddie became sort of this new Doctor Evil as well. I'm not letting Frank get off either, but that's a debate for another day. Sorry.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like you said, it was breath of fresh air things, but now he's got the monopoly, as it were, on Sky. He's basically taking the piss. I mean, I moan about pay-per-view more than most, but what we've got to remember is that the guys on this call and the majority of people that listen to the Boxing Asylum are not the target market for pay-per-view and Eddie Hearn, Matchroom, Sky Sports bullshit. They're just not. You know, we find other means to watch it, or in the instance of me, a lot of the time, don't watch it at all. I'm not bleeding poverty or anything like that, but I've said this many a times when we talk about pay-per-view. Pay-per-view has had a direct impact on my love affair with boxing and the demise of it. It's as simple as that. I'm not up on technology as you guys on here, and I've not got access to the fights like some people have. But the amount of fights that I would watch if they were on my normal Sky subscription, which I pay £70 a month for, but I do not watch and have stopped watching on pay-per-view. The amount of fights that I've not ever seen is quite alarming, really, for someone that contributes to a boxing podcast and has done for a few years. Like, I have never seen AJ versus Takam, White Hellenius, Burnett and Parejo that was chief support on AJ versus Parker. Ryder Cox was chief support. Never watched that fight. I've never watched White versus Parker. I've never watched Chisora versus Takam. Seen the finish, obviously. I never watched Campbell versus Mendy 2. That was chief support for an AJ fight. Crawler Jordan, never watched that. I've never watched White Chisora 2. I've never watched Walsh and Bellotti that was the chief support on that one. The list goes on and on and on.
Me, though.
I know the list goes on and on and on.
Did you watch Fight
this is what I mean. But yeah.
He's do Fury Wilder.
This is what I'm resorting to, though. Now, this is what I'm resorting to. I just sit on my sofa and I text a couple of people, including you guys. Has anyone got a dodgy link? And then I just watch the main event and then I just bugger off. I'm not watching the undercards, or I'm not invested in it, and that's and it's all well and good him sitting on there saying, oh well, if you don't like the pay-per-view, don't buy it. But that's me. That has impacted me. I mean, life goes on. Don't get me wrong. I'm happy as Larry, but that has impacted me. This pay-per-view proliferation and the downgrading of pay-per-views has had a direct impact on me, and it's a shame. It is a shame. As I said, I think I said the other week, I referred to Mr. Dale Nichols, friend of the pod, who's got some stats and keeps a record of the pay-per-views, to be fair. Since the brilliant fight between Tony Bellew and Flores in October 2016, there's been and up to including this year, so the rest of this year up to including that. So in the 4 and a bit years since then, there's been 7 male world title fights, British world title fights on Sky Sports. In that time, so since October 2016, there's been 22 pay-per-views, and that does include the 3 that outstand this year. So in just over 4 years to have been 22 pay-per-views, it is insane. And like I say, we're not the target market, so we kind of switch off for it. There was a stage whereby hardcore fans would, including me, would be outraged when a White and Chisora gets announced for pay-per-view and there's not a world title on the line. That was in 2018. Now it's almost par for the course. I mean, there's as I ranted about over the weekend, there's 3 pay-per-views left this year. It's just over 8 weeks, and there's 3 pay-per-views left this year, including this weekend, and 2 of them have not even got a world title fight on there, particularly as the main event. I mean, we've had 2 Bellew Hay pay-per-views, no world title on the line, obviously. We've got White Povetkin 1 and 2, no world title. Usyk Chisora, no world title. I mean, Chisora's, I sound like a broken record. Chisora's lost 9 fights, and it wasn't so long ago that people were saying Usyk wasn't a sell over here because he don't speak English. Well, next time you look, he's headlining his second pay-per-view on these shores in just over a year, I believe, a couple of years. So it's just crazy. Like I say, it used to be the criteria used to be for fights that couldn't be made without pay-per-view. You would do well to convince me that the likes of White Chisora, White Povetkin, etc., can no longer be made without pay-per-view. It's completely out of control. It's completely out of control, to be honest. But I've been here moaning about it for months and months on end. I mean, we're getting the last standard Sky world title fight we had was Smith against Ryder. the next one after that's going to be Saunders against Murray. I mean, Saunders and Murray is an absolute shocker. It is whichever way you look at it, it's a shocker. This is what we've been left with, and I think that as you guys have alluded to, if he can make his money and get out, I could see that happening, going on the celebrity circuit. He is good at what he does. What we have to remember is Matchroom and Eddie Hearn, like, as I keep saying, that we're not the target market. He don't really care what we think, but he's good at what he does in terms of selling a narrative. It's almost turning into the WWF Vince McMahon days, to be honest. And this Saturday, another example, I'll sit on my phone, I'll text you guys about 10, half 10, anyone got a link, I'll watch the main event, and then I'll move on. I think Usyk will completely box rings round Chisora and we'll stop him.